Hey, what's up, guys? So this is going to be round seven and also the very last round of the Magistral Argentina I League. So I think based on the current standings, Mr. Ben Seeley from United States of America have already confirmed his win of the league. He's won the league with 6 wins and 1 loss, basically, and he lost that one by time just because he was thinking too deeply. I think he was winning on the board as well. So right now I'm placed at second with 4 wins and 2 losses, just looking to close out the league, hopefully with a fifth win to secure my second place position, as I think my Brightwell is pretty high. So yeah, we're just waiting for my last round opponent. He is from Argentina. Okay, so my opponent is here, so ready to kickstart the game, the last round of the Magistral Argentina. Good luck, Mariano. So let's go. So today he'll be playing black and I'm playing white. I'll just go for my usual perpendicular opening. And then, okay, he's playing the tiger variation. So right now I'll just cross back, a continuation of a standard book for perpendicular. So he's played quite a common line of tiger. So I'll just play the usual book opening, which is an intersection diagonal cut. So he's playing a tiger many blacks option. So let's go with the usual sequence perhaps. With B3 being quite a fixed opening for this tiger to maybe potentially rose bill. Okay, so he's played the tiger maniplex to rose bill. So over here I have the opportunity to do a variation if I want to. The usual one that I play is either the central rose bill or maybe Taminori. So maybe let's go with Taminori opening and see what he does here. The usual book would be to play c6. Okay, so he goes along with c6 over here, which is the usual book sequence. So let's just cut across diagonally, maintaining the center shape, which is the essence of the Taminori opening. So I guess he's very much in book over here. So the usual book sequence over here is to actually go to d2 to actually just cut across and create the access on d3 to access a6. So today I'll play something different. After the crossover, I'll play to a f6, which is a variation. I'm not too familiar with this variation, but let me just go ahead and try it. I think Mr. Hideshi Taminori is very familiar, given this opening is his as well. So basically, expecting him to probably take up, yes, a5. So that's a very strong move by him to a5. So essentially, the head and tail theory tells me that on the head is over here to a5 and the tail end of it is a potential good move. So let me just move to that and just play to d2, expecting a response from him over here to e3, of which I would probably just cut down over here to a4 essentially. So it's kind of like a feed and intersect or feed and penetrate across. So if he doesn't take it and he chooses to take a move on the left, I would just cover back to the center over here perhaps. So let's see what he chooses. So I think he's playing fairly fast. Believe he might have prepared something perhaps. Okay, so he's cut into the center, so I'll just go for that center move, cut, kind of like exchanging moves. So right now I'm offering him a good move over here to f3 in exchange for tempo on the edge. And if he captures the edge, he essentially gives up that good move to play to, and I'll probably poison it with f2. So it really depends on whether he wants to take that unbalanced edge or not. If he takes this, I'll take this, I guess. Another option I have is to just jump right into e2 perhaps, but this would give up a quiet move potentially over here. So let me just go to the a6 for that exchange of move, and let's see what he continues with. So over here, the continuation potentially for me could be to just play to d7 over here, just a diagonal chip across and trying to make use of this c5 and c6 disc to gain two temples. So one diagonal chip across, he doesn't have any access to block b6, and I still have the d4 disc that gives me access to play one more consecutive move to b6 perhaps. So that's the strength of that shape. Let's see what he plays then. Okay, he takes a easy move out to g4, perhaps just ignoring that approach. Um, if that's the case, there is the top to consider before I do that chip move that we talked about, trying to get two tempos. If I were to play this and he takes the top, that would be a difficult position for me. Right now, because he's played g4 and essentially poisoned d7, I'm not so worried about him capturing d7 for the moment. So in fact, I should probably weigh handling the top a little bit more, or just handling the center as a balance. If I play here, he still have that quiet move across, of which I will probably continue with g5. So maybe e2, e1, g5, and then it will be probably a little bit more difficult for him, but he can still play maybe e7 to cut across to g3. Another option is to just play to maybe c1 over here to just form up the shape, but he then continues with an easy g5 as a consecutive tempo. So I think g4 was quite a good move for him. So right now, okay, so right now, few options over here. Maybe I could just let him have g5 and then I'll just continue with my two tempo plan. White, black perhaps, white, not too great, black. White, black, white, black. Yeah, basically I would probably have to take out to e2 in order to access g6 thereafter. So let's see. Yeah, the head and tail theory basically he played this, poisoned the bottom. I guess I don't really have to be too concerned about the bottom. Instead, I'll be probably more focused to the top. So, okay, let's just jump right into the center. E2, finding access to G5. So over here, based on the head and tail theory, the tail end is over here, but this shape is definitely stronger for him. So he'll probably consider E1 first. So just looking at this shape over here, I think E2 was probably the right selection to play safe. Okay, he plays an unexpected C1, very strong move to prevent this access to G5. Yeah, in fact, it's a very probably a very forced move. So if I don't respond to the top and I play somewhere else, he basically consolidates his shape to the top. So that doesn't make sense at all for me to just ignore it. If I were to just feed off the edge by playing d1, he basically just captures e1 with a potential balanceable edge on both sides. So that is a concern. If I were to play e1 to basically leave a one square gap in between to contest for the edge, he could just cut over to f2. Yeah, which basically stabilizes the side, I guess. In exchange, maybe white, black, white, and then I'll continue to force that move across. I go white, black, white. He basically has an option to probably control the edge fairly easily, I guess. Yeah, right now it is looking a bit confusing. Okay, if I were to play the bottom first, he goes to the top. Grab the edge here. And then he basically has a quiet move here. Not too great. So I'll have to contest the edge to the top. Let me just contest the edge to the top, leaving that one square gap, basically. And then he probably wouldn't be able to remove d4, because if he wanted to remove d4, he would required to play d1. So if I can keep d4, I can still pull off that maneuver that I mentioned earlier about consecutive tempo, getting d7 and also b6 consecutively, because I retain the b4 disc. So let's see. So yeah, it only makes sense for him to just jump across to f2 over here and basically defend this mini diagonal line that he probably intended to prevent my g5 access to begin with c1. So anticipating a sequence of f2, d7, he probably plays one move. Thereafter, let's see which move, maybe g5, and I'll be able to grab b6 over here. So let's see. Maybe he could potentially consider e7 at this point in time and just break the shape first. But if he does e7, clears off these two black discs, I could play g3, which is kind of like a head and tail, but more like a cause and effect in terms of what's changed on the board. So I don't think that's great for him either. I feel like I have a slight advantage right now in the mid game, but probably just a slender one, maybe 4 to 6 discs, I guess. So I think he's thinking pretty deep. Let's see. Okay, so he does go for e7, which basically clears off these two black discs, which we talked about. So clearing off this entire diagonal is kind of like a double-edged sword. This diagonal control allows me to attack to g3 or maybe also attack to c7. So now the point here is about g3 and c7. Both moves are kind of like correlated in the sense that if I play g3, I end up poisoning c7. If I play c7, I end up poisoning g3. So which one to choose first? So a simple way to think about is just to think maybe one or two moves in advance and just kind of like weigh the situation, and also in terms of how removable that disc is. So if I play the c7, I don't think it's likely that he removes the c7 disc anytime soon because I have a strong edge to the left. If this edge to the left were black, then there is probably a higher chance that he removes c7 in the future. But right now the edge on the left is white. So on the right, if I were to play g3, G3 has a higher probability of getting removed, which would then open up more moves for myself. And also, if I play G3, it's still poisoning D1 for him. And at the same time, if he removes, this F6 disc, this potentially unpoisons a nice move for me to play to B6 in the future. So, yep. So the only weakness that I want to talk about G3 is that I form a consecutive row on the third row, and then I basically open myself up to an attack by him with a quiet move to A3. But that isn't much of a threat because basically G3, A3, I still defend back the edge. Even if it takes B6, it's still a balanceable edge for me. So not much of a threat there. I'll just go for G3. Okay, so I guess over here the best for him to follow up is perhaps to F2 to basically maintain the center shape and poison my moves to the top. So anticipating F2, and then I will go for H3, waiting for him to play a poison move over here so that it unlocks B6 for me. And if he does go to maybe say H5 in response to H3, I would then feed off the edge potentially. So basically black, white, black, white, black. This becomes a consecutive diagonal. Maybe the tail end could be a move for me to play to at C7 thereafter. So that's why, basically with that sequence, the likelihood of G3 being removed by black is much higher and opening up C7 again for me. So right now he does attack the C3 move on the tail end. I'll just balance back. So even though right now this is a 5 disc unbalanced edge, but if he chooses to play to B6, I'll be able to take A7 and balance that edge out. Yep. and basically it would still be a safe H to play to. And right now, if I were to choose to ignore that, given that A7 is somewhat of a spare move, which I don't necessarily have to play, but my moves to the right would basically, if I were to play H3 or H5, for example, I basically remove the G4 this and give black a very nice quiet move over here, which is probably not what I want to do because I would end up having to deal with tempo on the edge and at the same time giving him more moves to move around. So I think at this point, maybe it's essential for me to actually respond to A7 and just make use of that move to just return the tempo to him and make him play a move over here. So right now the threat is that if he plays to F1, it's going to be kind of risky for me. So let's see. F1 basically is somewhat like a fork, which basically gives me two options, either D1 or F2, which both are difficult options for me to continue. Yeah, so I think right now he's playing a great game. Doesn't seem like I'm leading too much. In fact, I'm not too sure whether if I'm leading anymore. So he does play the fork maneuver, a very great move by him. So one option is to play, I mean, over here I essentially have three options. I can choose to play the D1, but D1 basically flips both these two black discs and gives me a potential bad region to the top left with a 3 disc region. So if he just closes out the remaining squares by parity, in the end, I would have to play B1 and essentially give him two moves consecutively, which could be quite detrimental. So this is probably not a great move to consider. But if I were to play F2, then he basically grabs the balance edge and potentially has tempo and also a balance edge. So that is a concern as well. Another option is to play to G1. But G1 opens up a possibility of the stoner trap because if he plays and converts this to a black disc, he can make the momentary diagonal control and at the same time attack this unbalanced edge across. So either way seems to be risky. So this is a very nice fork maneuver by him. So I have to weigh, I guess, yeah. So I'm just gonna go with D1. It's a very risky shape to adopt to the top left for sure because if he plays out parity to the this entire combined huge region, it will give me a huge issue in the end game. So it's kind of like a gamble between trying to secure as many stable disks within this region and at the same time giving up B1 in the future that gives him the corner access. So yeah, right now I feel like I'm kind of forced without a choice. I don't really want to face the stoner or I don't really want to give him the balance edge. So I think right now it doesn't seem too great for me in terms of the overall situation. So I feel definitely I'm losing in this position. But let's see, how I can try to probably gain some tempo potentially. So one way to kind of overcome this part is to try to gain a swindle somewhere, which I have yet to figure out how to do it. But yeah, I need to find something. Um, Over here, the straightforward approach would be to just simply jump in over here. Uh, but probably not too great to establish an edge to the right when I still have so many moves to the bottom to play to. Okay, let's go for the simple H4 first. Try to gain tempo perhaps. He's probably just gonna have to jump into F2 for sure, and then I'll go for H5. He jumps into the pocket perhaps, and then maybe I could play to the bottom potentially. Overall, the situation definitely looks bad for me, and I have the top left to deal with after playing that move to D1. So if he manages to play up parity with a considerable number of stable discs within this top right to the bottom region, then I think it should definitely be his win since the top left would allow him to overcome parity. So all he needs to do is to just try to avoid getting swindled in some way or another. So let's go for H5 with that continuation. And yeah, basically he's playing very, very solid today. Playing very well, definitely. So let's see what we can do over here. Okay, so he does go for that center cut to h5. Very strong move indeed. Right now, kind of difficult for me. The top is also a 5 square region. So everywhere seems to be somewhat problematic for me either way. So let's see. So I'll just jump into the x square over here to g2 and basically try to sacrifice the right edge in exchange for maybe parity potentially. So let's see. So one of the reasons why I have to sacrifice the right edge is basically to clear off the discs to the right so that my bottom moves would be unpoisoned. So that's the general idea at least. Um, okay, let's see. Okay, so he takes the corner. Over here I have an option to maybe choose to jump in over here, which he will probably sweep the edge. I'll give up the edge and then I'll probably try to find some tempo to the bottom. If I were to jump in over here and he goes for this, I can still go in and sacrifice the edge. So the difference is I don't get any nestled discs along these columns, so it would be meaningless to play h2 over g1. So I'll have to go to g1. So let me defend with g1 first. So essentially, he might be forced over here to play h3. And if he does play h3, potentially I don't have to respawn over here at the moment, perhaps. Since he's cleared off this disc, I don't really have to respawn over here to give him the stable edge, but rather I'll wait for him to jump in before I actually consider that move. So given the head and tail theory, maybe I'll consider tail end of it at d7, or maybe c7 is possible as well. c7 feeding d7, going to the edge. White, black, white, black, white, maybe. Black, white, maybe black, white, black, white, and then he probably jumps in for that diagonal control. Okay, let's go for the c7 move, anticipating for a d7 sequence. Probably have to keep a close eye on this diagonal control as well, which is going to give me a lot of problems towards the end game, I guess. So I'm going to just jump into d7 right now, capturing the edge. So let's see what other sequences he might consider. If he goes, anytime he goes to b2, I would jump in to defend with h2. So I don't think he will start to the bottom left, but rather e8, e8, f8, maybe f7. I don't know. If I jump in over here, it might be a concern because I wouldn't have control over the diagonal in the future, and I wouldn't be able to access it as well. And if he goes for the diagonal control and chases this, I would be forced to respawn over here, which I wouldn't have access back into the center potentially. So that is a concern. If I were to play a floating X square right now and he goes for this, I would still have a problem trying to defend. So I think my only option right now is to just play the edge, even though it's probably his win with a diagonal control either way, which I wouldn't be able to defend against. So if he plays this, I'm somewhat forced to respawn over here. He takes the edge. I basically have no access, I think. Do I have access? If I were to play this and he controls the diagonal, I would probably have one more move here, but still insufficient to probably play out to the bottom right. So that's going to be an issue there. So if you play something else, for example, maybe b7, I would probably take the diagonal control and attack with a floating x square. So he has to take this. So black, white, black. White takes the interior, black goes in. If black goes here, I'll jump in and I'll have the corner access. So that's fine. Black, white, black, white. If black takes this sweep, I still have this disc to g4 that gives me access over here to c8. How about black, white, black, white, and then maybe black first covers this, potentially. White and black then jumps in over here. And basically white, black. Then I'll be forced to actually play b2, b7, and I'll probably give up the corner and also give up a couple more moves and probably lose in a very bad count, I guess. So yeah, kudos to Mariano. I think he played a great game. It does seem like I've lost the game over here. Let's see whether I have any opportunities to try to overturn the situation. This diagonal control is probably too strong. Okay, he doesn't play the diagonal control. Instead, he decides to play it safe, which is unexpected, to f7, which is probably a fair move to play as well, because it's a safer approach, potentially. Yeah, I guess I don't really have much of an option. I have to respond to it and just grab to g8, defend the edge, and maybe wait for him to just trigger the diagonal control tempo. So he's probably going to just feed off this edge to make it a double balance edge for him to sweep in the end. So yeah, it's probably a huge black win with that diagonal control. So he does play the diagonal control, which, yep, I basically don't really have much of an option but to just respond to it. I have to defend it. So it's somewhat like a forced move, so I have to play h2 here. And then basically he sweeps down, potentially. Probably don't have much of an option based on the configuration to the bottom right. So surprisingly, he doesn't play to the edge, but rather he plays to the C square. Okay, I'll just grab this quickly. To G6. I'm not too sure why he responded to G7, essentially, because if he took H7, it would probably be an easy win for him because I would be forced to take the corner and he'll take it, and I'll probably be forced to feed it again. So right now I'll just play this, which is a forced move on my part, potentially. Well, I guess he still has the diagonal control, so he can play this, which is kind of a weird sequence for him to play to. But yeah, I basically have no option but to play the corner. And then essentially sweep down, which is my only choice. Okay, good game. I think I definitely got away. Well, I definitely got really lucky in this end game. So, yeah, good game, Mariano. Thanks for the game. Yeah, and definitely, I think you had more than one way to actually uh, win the game easily in the end. So, yeah, thanks for the chance, I guess. So I hope all of you enjoyed this, and this is the final round. So with this, I probably secure my second spot. Probably not the way that I wanted to win the game, though. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.